Russ, let's go through some learning lessons for other athletic administrators in this industry. Firstly, what were some of the warning signs that you saw along the way that perhaps maybe when it happened you didn't recognize, but as you sit back now and look, you can say, maybe I should have seen that, or other ADs can pick this up fairly easily?
You know, I think if we're really good at our jobs, then we are visible among our staff, and we build really good relationships. And it's easy for people to, you know, look you in the eye and be nice and say all the right things, you know, to your face. But then when you leave the room, are they going to act the same way? And so I think it's that we want to trust everyone, but how do we verify? Or maybe it's verify and then trust. And so having that real, you know, raw, personal, honest relationship with people where, hey, they're going to tell you the truth. And they're going to say, hey, you know what, we might want to watch out for this. Because when I'm interacting with that person, everything's great. Everything's fine. You know, I don't want to tell the AD, you know, bad news. And so making sure that people have the ability to always tell you the truth, and then making sure that, you know what, don't be afraid that if you see people around our program, you know, in our buildings or, you know, in our parking lots or whatever, that you ask who those people are. Hey, what's your role? How are you affiliated? Who are you? Because we had some of that related to our case. And so making sure that your people are empowered to say, hey, you know what, something's wrong, this doesn't feel right, maybe there's nothing to it, but let's look into it, let's verify and then trust. And so that's a fine line, because you want your people to do their job, you want them to feel like you believe in them, but in this high stakes compliance world, you better know as much as possible and you better have the safeguards. And so I think that one-on-one personal, or how do I get to know these people, are they really telling me the truth, do they feel comfortable that, hey, that's the boss, that's the AD, can I really tell them something? They need to know that they can. So we try to really ingrain that as much as possible. You see something, say something, bring it to us. Let's empower our people to do that. So I think that's a key part of our communication as we move forward from this.
So on that topic of communication strategy, you had 4 chancellors during your time here in the last 7 years. Discuss communication throughout the process, communicating externally with fans, with the university community, and then internally communicating with your own bosses, with your own staff and coaches.
I think one of the things that was hard in this was really communicating, you know, with the fans, because you want to be honest with them, you want to tell them what's happening, but you've got to protect the process. And our fans were frustrated, and we hear all that. The other layer to that is on your own campus. The first chancellor that I had, the one who hired me, was executive summary. You know, give me the high points. I trust the staff to execute the plans and the strategies, but give me the high points. Then we had an interim who was basically like, hey, let's get through this. Let's get the truth on the table. And then the chancellor that we had the last 3 years was very, very detail oriented. He wanted to know more detail. So you have to adapt your communication style. And then now we have an interim chancellor that started in January. So we're in the aftermath of the case. And I want him to know, here's how we have compliance, here's our institutional control, here's our setup. So everyone's been different. All the different chancellors have had unique styles, but they've all wanted what's best for the institution. And they need to be the ones that carry the message on institutional control. And I think it's our job to empower them with information. So it's been a challenge, because they're all unique, but we have to adapt to them. We can't just say, well, I've always done it this way with the first chancellor, and now we're going to do it the same way with the third, you know, leader. You can't do it that way. You have to adapt to them and understand their style. So we've had to learn, we've had to pivot several times, but that's the nature of that position. The presidents and chancellors, they have some turnover, and we need to adapt to them. But over-communicating and making sure they're fully informed, I think, has helped our position in athletics to say they get it, they understand, they're doing it the right way, we trust them, and let's let them, you know, continue to do their jobs.
What about from an external communication standpoint? The NCAA says keep quiet, don't say anything. Obviously, you guys didn't necessarily do that, but would you even advise other universities to do it even more, that maybe you don't have anything to lose by being overly transparent, because at the end of the day, the more that you can keep people engaged, the more likely that they're going to want to support you in that process?
That's really something I think we need to look at in terms of the structure. I get confidentiality, I get there's a process, but a lot of times the uncertainty is worse than the penalties. So you get all these things accused of your program, really starting in 2013, and you can't say anything. You can't defend yourself. You can't go public because you're restricted by the process. But yet the public narrative, I mean, we had basically 5 recruiting classes with a lot of uncertainty and trying to navigate that. So I don't know what the right answer is there. I think we need to keep talking about it as leaders in athletics about how do we communicate these things? How do we get everything on the table faster in the process so it doesn't linger? And then is there a way to communicate, in a very transparent way without impacting, the procedure and the confidentiality and the fairness aspect of it, but also letting the constituents know that, hey, here's the process, here's how it's going to work, we got this under control, we're going to take responsibility where we need to, we're going to disagree where we need to, and we'll move forward. And so it's not an easy answer because it's so complex and there's so many twists and turns. And I think another thing that we have to learn from is, what is the real view of the NCAA? How do they really view your program? And if you understand that and have those relationships, then I think you can make sure you're at the table. You can make sure that there's dialogue so you're not surprised. And I think that just wraps up into the whole communication strategies that we have to get better at, I think, as an association.
What about best practices for dealing, firstly, with the Notice of Allegations and then preparing for a meeting with the Committee on Infractions?
I think it's always great to have, outside perspective and outside experts, helping you, outside counsel. I think that's very, very important that we continue that. I think I worry a little bit about, do we lawyer up too much? But I think you need that independent, expert, voice at the table. One of the things that we've done here at Ole Miss is we added our own general counsel for athletics. He's 100% dedicated to athletics, not only day-to-day legal matters, but in the compliance world. Our compliance staff now reports to the general counsel's office through this position. So we've adopted that, and I think that's a best practice moving forward. I think the education and the basically just how do we overkill communication. So we have monthly coaches meetings, we have monthly all staff meetings separate from those. We meet with our football staff separately. Those things are things that we've adopted along the way to have best practices. The high profile student athlete program that we talked about, we have to continue that. That's not going away. We're going to have high profile athletes on our campus. We need to continue that as well. And then as an athletic director, I think we have to have robust, constant communication with the NCAA staff. President's office, general counsel's office, obviously the enforcement office, and there's different layers. You have the investigative team and you have the development team. And we need to be engaged, with both of them in a proactive manner so you're not surprised. So you don't have them call you and say, hey, we've been looking into this, for a couple months and now you have an issue. You get that call on the front end. So I think those are some lessons learned and some best practices that we've employed here. We'll continue to learn from other cases, whether it's academic cases or whatever. We'll continue to learn from those and install those best practices. But the athletic director better know the compliance staff, better know general counsel. You better have relationships with outside counsel, with the NCAA, and then I think we can always move our programs forward in the right way.
And lastly, what about navigating your own career and your own leadership throughout this process? You said earlier you have to stay even-keeled, but that's a lot easier said than done. So how do you manage yourself throughout this ordeal?
I think we all have to have outlets. I enjoy exercising, putting on headphones and just kind of, focusing on exercise. Family is very important to me, and making sure that I'm not bringing a bunch of, the challenges home. one, they're probably not going to listen to it, right? They want to go play basketball or play catch in the yard with my boys, or Sonia wants to talk about, things that happened in her day. And so I think your family is a great outlet of balance. A couple years ago, I had one of my colleagues tell me, "Do you have a dog?" And I'm like, "No, my boys want a dog, but you know what? I don't want a dog yet." You know what? Get a dog. It helps. You know what? We have a dog. It's awesome. It's a great relief. It's a great stress. I think relief for me, for the family. So that's how you have to do it. You have to compartmentalize as much as possible. You have to make sure you have outlets. I think you have to have people within your inner circle, whether it's on campus or colleagues, that you can call and vent to. And it's just you and that person. I think that's very, very important. But then how do we be professional? How do we handle this professionally? How do we represent the institution at all times? And that's how we've decided to take the approach. And I played fullback in college. Let's hit it head on. Let's deal with it. And if we need to knock it out, we'll knock it out. If we need to maneuver it a different way, we'll maneuver it a different way for the betterment of the program.